Michael gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white against the black leather. The hum of the engine and the blur of city lights did little to distract him from the turmoil within. He glanced at the digital clock on the dashboard. 8:45. Caroline and the girls would be waiting for him. The thought of their expectant faces filled him with a mix of dread and longing. As he turned onto their quiet suburban street, memories of better times flooded his mind. He remembered the joy of their first apartment, small but filled with love. Now, the walls seemed to close in on him, suffocating under the weight of secrets and lies. Pulling into the driveway, Michael sighed deeply. He sat there for a moment, staring at the front door. The porch light was on, casting a warm glow that should have felt welcoming but only made his heart ache. He knew he had to face them, but the words he needed to say felt heavy on his tongue. He killed the engine and stepped out of the car. The night air was cool, a stark contrast to the turmoil boiling inside him. He walked up to the door, each step feeling like a mile. Inside, Caroline was in the kitchen, finishing up dinner. The aroma of roast chicken and mashed potatoes filled the house. She looked up as he entered, her face lighting up with a smile that quickly faded when she saw his expression. "Hey, you're home," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. "Dinner's almost ready." "How was your day?" Michael forced a smile. "Long. Just a lot on my mind." Caroline walked over and gave him a quick kiss. "Well, you can relax now. The girls are in their room, playing. They'll be excited to see you." Michael nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "Yeah, I missed them." Emma, their 6-year-old, came running into the room, her eyes bright with excitement. "Daddy, you're home." She wrapped her arms around his legs, and Michael lifted her up, hugging her tightly. "Hey, princess, how was your day?" "Good. I drew a picture at school today. Want to see?" "Of course I do. Go get it for me." Emma dashed off, and Michael set her down gently. He turned to see Caroline watching him, her eyes filled with a mix of love and concern. "Are you okay, Michael?" she asked softly. He took a deep breath, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Caroline, we need to talk." Her smile faltered. "What is it? What's wrong?" Before he could answer, Lily, their 3-year-old, toddled into the room, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny. She reached up for Michael, and he scooped her into his arms, holding her close. "Daddy," Lily said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "I missed you." "I missed you too," sweetheart, Michael whispered, his heart breaking a little more with each passing second. He looked at Caroline, who was now frowning, her worry deepening. "Can we talk after dinner?" he asked. "I don't want to spoil the evening for the girls." Caroline hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but don't keep me in suspense too long." Dinner was a blur. Michael tried to focus on the conversation, laughing at Emma's stories and helping Lily with her food. But his mind was elsewhere, trapped in a web of guilt and fear. After dinner, he helped clean up, trying to delay the inevitable. Finally, when the girls were in bed, he knew he couldn't put it off any longer. He found Caroline in the living room, tidying up. "Caroline," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "We really need to talk." She turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "What is it, Michael? You're scaring me." He took her hands in his, feeling the familiar warmth of her touch. "I don't even know where to start. There's so much I've been hiding from you. Things I should have told you a long time ago." Her eyes widened in fear. "What are you talking about? Michael, you're really scaring me." He swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "I've been working a job. It's not what you think. It's not honest work, Caroline. And there's someone else. Someone I've gotten involved with." Caroline's face went pale. She pulled her hands away, shaking her head. No, Michael, this can't be happening." "I'm so sorry," he whispered, tears stinging his eyes. "I never meant for it to get this far." Caroline sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face. "What are we going to do?" I don't know, Michael admitted, his voice breaking. But I promise, I'll take care of you and the girls. I'll always be there for you, even if we're not together. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with pain and confusion. How could you do this to us? I was desperate, he said softly. I thought I was doing it for us, but I see now how wrong I was. I'm so sorry, Caroline. She stared at him for a long moment, then stood up, her expression hardening. We'll get through this somehow, but right now I need time to think. Michael nodded, his heart heavy with regret. Take all the time you need. As he watched her walk away, he knew that his actions had forever changed their lives, and he could only hope that, somehow, they would find a way to heal. Michael sat in his cramped apartment, the walls closing in on him as he stared at the stack of bills on the table. Fresh out of college, he had imagined a bright future with a lucrative career and a comfortable lifestyle. Instead, he was stuck in a low-paying job, barely making ends meet. Caroline, his fiancée at the time, walked into the room, her smile lighting up the otherwise dreary space. Hey, Michael, how was the job hunt today? She asked, placing a cup of coffee in front of him. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Not great, Caroline. It seems like every position requires more experience than I have. It's like a never-ending cycle. Caroline sat beside him, taking his hand. We'll get through this. I believe in you. Something will come up, I know it. Michael squeezed her hand, grateful for her optimism. I just don't want to let you down. We've got a wedding to plan and a future to build. I want to give you everything you deserve. You already do, Michael, she said softly. We'll make it work, together. Weeks turned into months, and Michael's frustration grew. He took on odd jobs to supplement his meager income, but it was never enough. Caroline, always supportive, worked part-time while finishing her own studies. They made do with what they had, but the strain was evident. One evening, as they shared a simple dinner of spaghetti and canned sauce, Michael broached a subject that had been weighing on his mind. Caroline, maybe we should postpone the wedding, he said, not meeting her eyes. Caroline paused, her fork halfway to her mouth. Postpone? Why? I just feel like we should be more stable before we take that step. I want to be able to provide for you, to give you a proper home. She set her fork down and reached across the table, taking his hand. Michael, I don't care about the house or the money. I care about us. We can make a life together no matter what. We love each other, and that's what matters. Her words touched him deeply, but the doubt lingered. He knew she meant every word, but his pride and desire to be a good provider gnawed at him. A few weeks later, Michael received a call that seemed like a lifeline. He had applied for a marketing position at a small startup, and they wanted to interview him. He shared the news with Caroline, who jumped with excitement. See? I told you something would come up, she exclaimed, hugging him tightly. The interview day arrived, and Michael donned his best suit, an old but well-kept ensemble that Caroline had helped him pick out. The interview went well, and he left feeling cautiously optimistic. That evening, they celebrated with takeout from their favorite Chinese restaurant. I have a good feeling about this one, Caroline said, clinking her soda can against his. Me too, Michael agreed, allowing himself to feel hopeful for the first time in months. A week later, the call came. Michael got the job. The relief was palpable, and for a moment it felt like their troubles were behind them. Michael's new job at the startup brought a sense of relief, but it wasn't long before the reality of their situation set in. Despite the better paycheck, their one-bedroom apartment began to feel increasingly cramped, especially with the baby on the way. One night, Michael came home late from work. He walked into the dimly lit apartment to find Caroline asleep on the couch, a textbook open on her lap. Gently, he closed the book and placed it on the coffee table, then kissed her forehead. She stirred, opening her eyes. Hey, you're home, she said groggily, sitting up. How was work? Long, Michael replied, sinking into the couch beside her. And exhausting. How are you feeling? Caroline rubbed her growing belly and smiled faintly. Tired, but okay. But okay. The baby's been kicking a lot. Michael placed his hand on her stomach, feeling a gentle thump. It made his heart swell with a mix of joy and anxiety. That's our little fighter, he said softly. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. Finally, Michael broke the silence. Caroline, we need to talk about our living situation. This apartment, it's just too small. And with the baby coming, we need more space. Caroline nodded, her expression troubled. I know, Michael, but where can we afford to go? Rent is so high everywhere. Michael sighed. I've been thinking about it a lot. Maybe we could look into moving further out of the city. It's cheaper, and we could get more space for the money. But your job is here, and so is mine, Caroline pointed out. How would we manage the commute? We'll find a way, Michael said, trying to sound confident. I could try to negotiate working from home a couple of days a week, and maybe you could do the same once the baby is born. Caroline looked at him, her eyes full of worry. I just don't want us to be stretched too thin. You're already working so hard, and I don't want you to burn out. I'll be fine, Michael assured her. We just need to make it through this rough patch. Once we're on our feet, everything will get easier. Days turned into weeks, and Caroline's due date drew closer. The financial strain became more apparent as bills piled up and their savings dwindled. Michael worked longer hours, taking on freelance projects at night to bring in extra money. Caroline, despite her growing belly, continued to work part-time, but the stress of balancing everything was taking its toll. One Saturday morning, as they sat down for breakfast, Michael brought up the idea of asking for help. Caroline, I've been thinking, maybe we should ask my parents for a loan. Just something to help us get through the next few months until the baby comes and we can figure things out. Caroline frowned, pushing her scrambled eggs around her plate. I don't like the idea of borrowing money, Michael. What if we can't pay it back? We will, Michael said firmly. It's just a temporary solution. We'll pay them back as soon as we can. I hate the idea too, but I don't see another way right now. Caroline sighed. Okay, let's think about it. Maybe we could also sell some stuff we don't need. Every little bit helps. Yeah, that's a good idea, Michael agreed. We'll get through this, Caroline. We just need to stay strong and keep pushing forward. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. They sorted through their belongings, selling what they could and saving every penny. Michael talked to his parents, who agreed to lend them some money, easing their immediate financial burden. Caroline prepared for the baby, nesting in their tiny apartment and trying to stay positive. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Caroline leaned against Michael, her head on his shoulder. We're going to be okay, right? Yes, we are, Michael said, kissing the top of her head. We've come this far and we're not giving up now. Despite the challenges, they found moments of joy and hope. They decorated the corner of their bedroom to make space for the baby, laughing as they put together a crib and sorted through tiny clothes. As the due date approached, Michael couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and fear. The financial strain was still there, but the thought of holding his child for the first time made everything else seem insignificant. One night, Caroline woke him up, clutching her belly. Michael, it's time. The baby's coming. Michael's heart raced as he helped her to the car, their financial worries temporarily forgotten in the rush of anticipation and love. As they drove to the hospital, Michael glanced at Caroline, her face glowing with a mix of pain and joy. In that moment, he knew that no matter how tough things got, they would find a way through it together. The hospital visit was a whirlwind of emotions, but when Michael and Caroline brought their baby girl, Emma, home, everything seemed to click into place. The joy of their new addition, however, was soon overshadowed by the mounting bills and financial pressure. Michael knew he needed to find a solution, and fast. One afternoon, during a rare break from work, Michael decided to grab a coffee at a cafe he used to frequent in college. He sat down, savoring the brief respite, when he heard a familiar voice. Michael, is that you? He looked up to see Cooper, an old college friend, standing there with a wide grin. "Cooper." "Wow, it's been ages," Michael said, standing to shake his hand. They sat down, catching up on old times and their current lives. Michael found himself opening up about the financial struggles and the pressure of providing for his new family. "You know," Cooper said, leaning back in his chair, "I might have a solution for you. It's not a traditional job, but it pays well. Very well." Michael raised an eyebrow. "What kind of job are we talking about?" Cooper leaned in, lowering his voice. "Look, I run a kind of exclusive club. We cater to wealthy, lonely women who are looking for companionship. They pay handsomely for someone to spend time with them, make them feel special." Michael stared at him, not quite believing what he was hearing. "You mean like an escort service?" "Not exactly," Cooper said quickly. "It's more about being a companion, talking, listening, maybe dinner or an event. Nothing illegal or sleazy, just companionship." Michael was silent for a moment, thinking about the bills, the cramped apartment, and the tiny crib squeezed into the corner of their bedroom. "How much does it pay?" "A lot." "Enough to make a real difference in your life," Cooper replied. "You wouldn't have to do it forever. Just long enough to get on your feet." Michael felt a knot in his stomach. The idea seemed so far removed from anything he'd ever considered, but the lure of quick, substantial money was hard to ignore. "Let me think about it," he finally said. "Of course. Here's my card," Cooper said, handing it over. "Just give me a call if you decide to give it a try. No pressure." Michael took the card, slipping it into his pocket. They chatted a bit more, but his mind was elsewhere. As he drove home, Cooper's offer played over and over in his head. That evening, as he sat on the couch with Caroline, watching Emma sleep in her bassinet, he broached the subject carefully. "Caroline, I ran into an old friend today. He mentioned a job opportunity that could really help us out." Caroline looked at him, interest piqued. "Oh, what kind of job?" "It's unconventional. It involves being a companion to wealthy women, just spending time with them, talking, that sort of thing. It pays really well," Michael explained, choosing his words carefully. Caroline frowned, her worry evident. "That sounds strange. Are you sure it's safe and legitimate?" "Cooper assured me it's all above board. And the money, Caroline. It could solve so many of our problems," Michael said, his voice almost pleading. She was silent for a moment, then shook her head. "I don't know, Michael. It sounds risky. What if it's not as straightforward as it seems?" I know, Michael said quickly. "But think about it. We could pay off some debts, maybe even move to a bigger place. It wouldn't be forever, just until we get on our feet." Caroline looked at him, her eyes searching his. "I trust you, Michael, but please be careful. I don't want anything to happen to you or to us." "I will," Michael promised, squeezing her hand. "I just want to give you and Emma the life you deserve." A few days later, after much deliberation, Michael found himself dialing Cooper's number. They arranged to meet at the club for an introduction and orientation. When he arrived, the place was opulent, with plush furnishings and an air of exclusivity. Cooper greeted him warmly, leading him through the ins and outs of the job. "You'll be meeting your first client tonight," Cooper said, handing Michael a file. "Her name is MS, Luna. She's very wealthy, very influential, and very lonely. Just be yourself, be charming, and listen." Michael nodded, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. He dressed carefully, making sure he looked presentable, and headed to the address provided. MS. Luna's mansion was impressive, with sprawling gardens and an imposing facade. Michael was greeted at the door and led into a lavish sitting room where MS. Luna waited. "Good evening, MS. Luna," Michael said, offering his hand. She took it, her gaze appraising. "Good evening, Michael. Please sit." They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. Michael found himself slipping into the role easily, his natural charm and genuine interest winning MS. Luna over. When the evening ended, she handed him an envelope, thick with cash. "Thank you, Michael. I enjoyed our time together," she said with a smile. Michael walked out of the mansion, the weight of the envelope in his pocket both comforting and disconcerting. As he drove home, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. This was a path he'd never imagined taking, but it was a path that promised to change everything. Back at home, he found Caroline waiting for him, worry etched on her face. He handed her the envelope, watching as her eyes widened in surprise. "Is this from tonight?" she asked, incredulous. Michael nodded. "Yes, it's real, Caroline. This could really help us." She looked at him, a mixture of relief and lingering doubt in her eyes. "Just promise me you'll be careful, Michael, and come home to us." "I promise," he said, pulling her into a hug. "Everything I'm doing for us." As he held her, Michael knew that this was just the beginning of a journey filled with uncertainty and moral compromise. But for now, the immediate future seemed a little less daunting, and that was enough to keep him going. Michael's work with MS. Luna continued, and soon he found himself in high demand among her wealthy friends. Each engagement brought a significant boost to their finances, and for the first time in a long while, Michael and Caroline could breathe easier. One evening, Michael returned home with an envelope thicker than usual. Caroline was feeding Emma, her face lighting up as he walked in. "Hey, you're back. How did it go?" she asked, putting down the spoon and walking over to him. Michael handed her the envelope. "See for yourself." Caroline opened it, her eyes widening at the sight of the money. "Michael, this is amazing. How much is here?" 20,000, Michael said, a mix of pride and disbelief in his voice. "That's just for tonight." Caroline shook her head almost in awe. "This will help us so much. We can finally start saving for a bigger place. Maybe even get some new furniture." Michael nodded, relief washing over him. "Yeah, and we can pay off some of the debt too. I've already started looking at some 3-bedroom apartments." Caroline hugged him tightly. "I knew we'd get through this. I'm so proud of you." As the months went by, their financial situation steadily improved. They moved into a spacious 3-bedroom apartment in a nicer part of town. Michael worked fewer hours at his day job, focusing more on his high-paying evening engagements. The extra time allowed him to be more present for Caroline and Emma. One evening, as they sat in their new living room, Caroline looked around, a smile on her face. "This place is beautiful, Michael. It feels like a dream." Michael smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" "Yes, we have," Caroline agreed, her eyes shining with gratitude. I hope this doesn't change us." "It won't," Michael assured her. "This is just a means to an end. Once we're stable, I can look for something more conventional." Caroline nodded, though a hint of worry lingered in her eyes. "I trust you, Michael. Just promise me you'll always come home to us." "I promise," Michael said, kissing her forehead. "Always." Despite their newfound wealth, Michael couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Each engagement reminded him of the compromise he'd made, but the sight of Caroline and Emma, happy and secure, made it seem worth it. One night, Michael met with a new client, MS Hathaway, at an exclusive restaurant. She was elegant and poised, but clearly lonely. They talked about art, travel, and life, with Michael playing the attentive listener. As the evening drew to a close, MS Hathaway sighed. "It's been so long since I've had a meaningful conversation like this." "Thank you, Michael." Michael smiled politely. "I'm glad you enjoyed our time together." She handed him an envelope, her fingers lingering on his for a moment. "I hope we can do this again soon." "Of course," Michael said, pocketing the envelope. "Whenever you like." On his drive home, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Cooper. It was a reminder of an upcoming engagement with another client, MS Trenton. Michael sighed, the weight of his double life pressing down on him. He arrived home late, quietly entering to find Caroline asleep on the couch, a book open on her lap. He gently lifted her, carrying her to bed without waking her. As he lay down beside her, he couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Caroline trusted him, and while he hadn't broken any laws or engaged in anything illicit, the secrecy of his work gnawed at him. The next morning, as they had breakfast, Caroline brought up a topic that had been on her mind. "Michael, do you think we'll ever get back to normal? I mean, with a regular job and a regular life." Michael paused, considering his words. "I hope so, Caroline. This is just temporary. Once we have enough saved and we're comfortable, I'll find something else." Caroline nodded, though her concern was evident. "I just miss having you around more. And I worry about you." "I know," Michael said softly. "And I miss you too. But we're almost there. Just a little longer." As time went on, Michael's reputation among the elite grew, and with it, the opportunities and the money. They were able to buy a new car, pay off their debts, and start a college fund for Emma. One evening, after another successful engagement, Michael came home to find Caroline waiting for him in the kitchen, a serious expression on her face. "Michael, we need to talk," she said, her tone leaving no room for delay. "What's wrong?" Michael asked, his heart racing. Caroline took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about our future, about what this work is doing to you, to us. I know it's been good for us financially, but it's taking a toll on you. I can see it." Michael sat down, his shoulders slumping. "I know, Caroline. I've been feeling it too. But what choice do we have? This is the only thing that's been able to provide for us." "There has to be another way," Caroline insisted. "We can't keep living like this, with you feeling guilty and secretive. It's not good for us, for our family." Michael looked at her, seeing the resolve in her eyes. "You're right. I've been so focused on providing that I didn't see the cost. We'll figure something out, together." Caroline reached out, taking his hand. "We will. We always do." In that moment, Michael felt a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that while the money had brought them comfort, it was their love and unity that truly mattered. Together, they would find a way to build the future they dreamed of, without compromising their integrity and happiness. Michael's reputation as a charming and attentive companion continued to grow, bringing more opportunities and wealth. Among his clients was MS, Luna, a 58-year-old widow with a commanding presence and a keen intellect. She was different from the others, more sophisticated, more demanding, and undeniably more intriguing. One evening, Michael received a call from Cooper. "Michael, MS, Luna has requested your company tonight. Be at her estate by 7. "All right, I'll be there," Michael replied, noting the address. As he hung up, he felt a strange mix of anticipation and anxiety. He dressed carefully, choosing a tailored suit that Caroline had helped him pick out. Before leaving, he kissed Caroline and Emma goodbye. "I'll be back late. Don't wait up." Caroline smiled, though there was a hint of worry in her eyes. "Be careful, Michael. I love you." "I love you too," he replied, heading out the door. MS. Luna's estate was a sprawling mansion, surrounded by meticulously manicured gardens. Michael was greeted at the door by a butler and escorted to a lavish sitting room where MS. Luna waited. "Good evening, MS. Luna," Michael said, offering his hand. She took it, her grip firm and eyes sharp. "Good evening, Michael. Please sit." They spent the evening discussing art, literature, and business. Michael found himself genuinely enjoying the conversation, drawn to MS. Luna's intelligence and charisma. She was a woman who knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to pursue it. As the night drew to a close, MS. Luna leaned closer. "Michael, I've enjoyed our time together. You're unlike any of the others." Michael smiled, feeling a strange warmth. "Thank you, MS. Luna. I've enjoyed it too." She handed him an envelope, thicker than usual. "I hope we can make this a regular arrangement." Michael nodded, pocketing the envelope. "Of course, whenever you need me." As he drove home, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a business arrangement. There was something about Ms. Luna that drew him in, something he couldn't quite define. Weeks turned into months, and Michael's visits to Ms. Luna's estate became more frequent. Each time, the conversations grew more personal, and the connection between them deepened. He found himself looking forward to their evenings together, even as a nagging guilt gnawed at him. One evening, after a particularly engaging discussion about Renaissance art, Ms. Luna made a proposition. "Michael, I want you to consider something," she said, her tone serious. "What is it?" Michael asked, intrigued. "I want you to become more than just a companion. I want you to be a part of my life," officially, she said, her eyes locking onto his. Michael felt his heart skip a beat. "What do you mean?" Ms. Luna leaned forward. "I want us to get married. I can offer you a position on the board of my company, a substantial salary, and a life of comfort and luxury." Michael was stunned. "Ms. Luna, I have a family, a wife and daughter." "I know," she said softly. "And I'm willing to support them as well. You could ensure their financial security for life." Michael sat back, his mind racing. The offer was tempting, incredibly so. But the thought of leaving Caroline and Emma, of uprooting his life, was almost too much to bear. "Can I think about it?" he asked finally. "Of course, Ms." Luna replied. "But don't take too long. I need an answer soon." Driving home that night, Michael felt a heavy weight on his chest. The decision before him was monumental, and he knew there was no easy answer. When he arrived home, Caroline was waiting for him, a worried expression on her face. "Michael, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Michael took a deep breath, sitting down beside her. "Caroline, I need to tell you something. Ms. Luna has offered me a proposition." Caroline frowned. "What kind of proposition?" "She wants me to marry her," Michael said quietly. "She's offering a position on her company's board, a huge salary and financial security for us, for you and Emma." Caroline's eyes widened in shock. "Marry her? Michael, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that this could solve all our problems, Caroline. We'd never have to worry about money again. But it means I'd have to leave you and Emma," Michael said, his voice breaking. Tears filled Caroline's eyes. "How could you even consider that, Michael? We're a family. We're supposed to stick together, no matter what." "I know," Michael said, his own eyes filling with tears, "but I don't know what to do. This is a chance to give you both a better life." Caroline shook her head. "A better life without you isn't better at all. We need you, Michael. Emma needs you. I need you." Michael pulled her into a tight embrace. "I love you, Caroline. I don't want to lose you. But I'm scared of what will happen if we keep struggling like this." "We'll find a way," Caroline whispered, clinging to him. "We always do. Just don't leave us." That night, Michael lay awake, torn between his love for his family and the tempting offer from Ms. Luna. He knew that whatever decision he made would change their lives forever. The next day, Michael met with Ms. Luna at her estate. She could see the conflict in his eyes as he sat down. "Have you made a decision?" she asked, her tone gentle but firm. Michael took a deep breath. "Ms. Luna, I appreciate your offer more than I can say. But I can't leave my family. They mean everything to me." Ms. Luna nodded slowly, a hint of disappointment in her eyes. "I understand, Michael. I respect your decision. If you ever change your mind, the offer stands." "Thank you," Michael said, relief and sadness washing over him. As he drove home, Michael felt a sense of clarity. He knew he had made the right choice, even though it meant turning down a life of luxury. His family was worth more than all the money in the world. When he walked through the door that evening, Caroline ran to him, wrapping her arms around him. "Thank you, Michael. Thank you for choosing us." "I'll always choose you," he whispered, holding her close. "No matter what." In that moment, Michael realized that true wealth wasn't measured in money or power, but in the love and support of those who mattered most. And with that knowledge, he knew they would find a way to build a better future together, no matter the challenges ahead. Michael spent the next few days in a daze, trying to process everything: his decision to turn down Ms. Luna's proposal weighed heavily on him, but he knew it was the right choice for his family. However, the financial strain persisted, and the pressure continued to mount. One evening, after putting Emma to bed, Michael and Caroline sat on the couch, the silence between them filled with unspoken worries. "Michael, we need to talk," Caroline finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know," Michael replied, taking her hand. "Things can't keep going like this." Caroline looked into his eyes, her own filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "What are we going to do? We can't keep relying on your night job. It's too much stress on you and it's not fair to any of us." Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about that a lot. I want to find something more stable, something that doesn't take me away from you and Emma so much." "But how?" Caroline asked, her voice breaking. "We're barely making it as it is. What can we do?" "We'll figure it out," Michael said firmly. "I'll start looking for a new job. Maybe something remote, or at least something with better hours." Caroline nodded, though she still looked worried. "I can try to pick up more shifts at work too. We'll make it work somehow." Michael squeezed her hand, feeling a surge of love and gratitude. "We'll get through this, Caroline. Together." The next morning, Michael began his job search in earnest. He updated his resume, scoured job boards, and reached out to old contacts. It was exhausting and often discouraging, but he kept pushing forward, determined to find a better solution for his family. One afternoon, as he sat at his laptop, his phone buzzed with a call from Cooper. "Hey," Michael, Cooper said, his tone businesslike. "I have another client who's very interested in meeting you tonight. It's a high-paying gig." Michael hesitated, glancing at Caroline, who was playing with Emma in the living room. "I don't know, Cooper. I'm trying to move away from that." "Look, I get it," Cooper said. "But this one could really help you out. Just one more time for old time's sake." Michael sighed, feeling torn. "All right, one more time. But that's it." "Great. I'll send you the details," Cooper said before hanging up. That evening, Michael dressed in his best suit and headed out, feeling a familiar mix of guilt and resignation. He arrived at the client's house, a luxurious penthouse in the city, and was greeted by an elegant woman in her 40s. "Good evening, Michael," she said, her smile warm and inviting. "I'm Alexandra." "Good evening, Alexandra," Michael replied, shaking her hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you." They spent the evening talking and enjoying each other's company. Alexandra was charming and intelligent, and Michael found himself relaxing despite his initial reluctance. As the night drew to a close, Alexandra handed him an envelope. "Thank you, Michael. I had a wonderful time," she said. "Thank you, Alexandra," Michael replied, pocketing the envelope. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." As he drove home, Michael felt a familiar sense of unease. He knew this couldn't continue. When he arrived, he found Caroline waiting for him, her expression worried. "How was it?" she asked, her voice tense. "It was fine," Michael said, sitting down beside her. "But I can't keep doing this, Caroline. It's not fair to you, to Emma, or to myself." Caroline nodded, her eyes filled with tears. "I know, but what other choice do we have?" "We'll figure it out," Michael said, pulling her into a hug. "I'm done with this. We'll find another way." The next morning, Michael received a call from an old friend, Jacob, who worked in the tech industry. "Hey, Michael," Jacob said. "I heard you're looking for a job. We have an opening for a remote project manager position. It's not the highest paying job, but it's stable and has good benefits." Michael's heart leapt. "That sounds perfect, Jacob. I'd love to apply." "Send me your resume, and I'll put in a good word for you," Jacob said. Michael quickly sent off his resume, feeling a surge of hope. A few days later, he received a call from Jacob's company, inviting him for an interview. The interview went well, and Michael felt optimistic for the first time in weeks. One evening, as Michael and Caroline were having dinner, his phone buzzed with an email notification. He opened it, reading the contents with bated breath. "I got the job," he said, a smile spreading across his face. Caroline's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Oh, Michael, that's wonderful." "It's not as much as what I was making with Cooper, but it's stable, and I'll be home more," Michael said, relief flooding through him. "That's all that matters," Caroline said, hugging him tightly. "We'll make it work." As Michael settled into his new job, the financial strain began to ease. It wasn't an immediate fix, but it was a start. More importantly, he was home with his family, and the guilt that had weighed so heavily on him started to lift. One evening, as they sat together watching Emma play, Michael turned to Caroline. "We did it," he said softly. "We're going to be okay." Caroline smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Yes, we are, because we have each other." In that moment, Michael realized that they had made it through the toughest part of their journey. Together, they could face whatever came next. Michael's new job as a remote project manager brought a sense of stability to their lives, but the scars from the past months still lingered. Caroline tried to move on, but the emotional toll of Michael's previous work and the near temptation of Ms. Luna's offer had left deep wounds. One evening, after putting Emma to bed, Michael and Caroline sat in the living room, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken tension. Michael glanced at Caroline, her face tired and her eyes distant. "Caroline, we need to talk," Michael said, breaking the silence. Caroline looked at him, her expression unreadable. "What is it, Michael?" "I know things haven't been the same since, everything that happened. I can feel the distance between us," he said, his voice filled with regret. Caroline sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I know, it's just. So much has happened. I'm trying to move past it, but it's hard." Michael nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "I understand. I just want us to be okay again. I want our family to be happy." Caroline looked away, tears welling up in her eyes. "I want that too, Michael. But it's not that simple. There's so much pain and mistrust now." Michael reached out, taking her hand. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. Please, just tell me what I need to do." Caroline pulled her hand away gently. "I think we need some time apart, to heal, to figure things out. Maybe some space will help us see things more clearly." Michael felt his heart drop. "You mean a separation?" "Just for a while," Caroline said, her voice breaking. "I need to focus on myself and Emma, and you need to figure out what you really want." Michael sat back, the weight of her words sinking in. "If that's what you think is best." Caroline nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I do. I still love you, Michael, but I need to find myself again." Over the next few days, they made arrangements for Michael to stay at a friend's place temporarily. The conversations were painful and filled with sorrow, but there was an underlying sense of mutual understanding. The day Michael packed his bags was one of the hardest. Emma watched, confused, as her father moved his things into the car. Caroline tried to keep things light for their daughter, but the sadness in her eyes was unmistakable. "Daddy, where are you going?" Emma asked, her voice small and worried. Michael knelt down, pulling her into a hug. "I'm going to stay with Uncle Jake for a little while, sweetheart. But I'll be back to see you all the time. Okay?" Emma nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Promise." "I promise," Michael said, kissing her forehead. "I love you so much, Emma." As he drove away, Michael felt a crushing sense of loss. He knew this separation was necessary, but it didn't make it any easier. The road ahead seemed long and uncertain. The days turned into weeks, and Michael and Caroline tried to navigate their new reality. They communicated regularly, mostly about Emma, but the distance between them was palpable. One evening, Michael called Caroline to check in. "Hey, how are things?" he asked, trying to keep his tone upbeat. "Okay," Caroline replied. "Emma's doing well. She misses you, though." "I miss her too," Michael said, his voice tinged with sadness. "And I miss you." Caroline was silent for a moment. "I miss you too, Michael. This isn't easy for any of us." "I know," he said. "I've been thinking a lot. About us, about everything. I want to make things right, Caroline." "I believe you," she said softly. "But I need to believe in us again. And that takes time." Michael nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes." As the weeks passed, Michael focused on his job and tried to find solace in the small victories. He visited Emma regularly, and each time he and Caroline seemed to grow a little closer, the walls between them slowly crumbling. One afternoon, while playing with Emma at the park, Michael noticed Caroline watching them, a faint smile on her lips. After Emma ran off to play with some other kids, Caroline walked over to Michael. "She's so happy when you're here," Caroline said, her eyes meeting his. "I'm happy too," Michael replied. "I miss being with both of you." Caroline took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot too, Michael. Maybe it's time we try again. Start fresh." Michael's heart soared. "You mean it?" "Yes," she said, a small smile breaking through. "But we need to take it slow. We can't just go back to how things were. We need to rebuild trust, step by step." "I'm ready to do whatever it takes," Michael said earnestly. Over the next few months, Michael and Caroline worked on rebuilding their relationship. They attended counseling, communicated openly, and slowly began to heal the wounds of the past. The process was slow and sometimes painful, but each step brought them closer to the family they once were. One evening, after putting Emma to bed in their now shared home, Michael and Caroline sat on the porch, watching the stars. "Do you think we'll be okay?" Michael asked, his voice filled with hope. Caroline leaned against him, her hand finding his. "I think we will. We've been through so much, but we're still here, together." Michael smiled, a sense of peace washing over him. "I love you, Caroline." "I love you too, Michael," she replied. "And I always will." In that moment, Michael realized that no matter how difficult the journey had been, they had found their way back to each other. Their love had been tested, but it had emerged stronger, ready to face whatever the future held. Michael's journey is a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the strength of the human spirit. Despite the temptations and trials he faced, he never lost sight of what truly mattered: his family. Through patience, dedication, and a willingness to confront their issues head-on, Michael and Caroline rebuilt their relationship and created a stable, loving home for Emma. Their story is a reminder that true wealth isn't measured by money or status, but by the connections we cherish and the people we hold dear. As they look to the future, Michael and Caroline know that together, they can overcome any obstacle and build a life filled with love, trust, and happiness. Let us know in the comments how this story has inspired you, or share your own experiences of overcoming adversity. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories like this one. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest uploads. Your journey through the complexities of the human heart starts now. Remember, your story isn't over yet. It's just a new chapter beginning. Stay strong, stay inspired.